Aloha, I'm Nubia Brown, and this is Redefined. In this episode, I'm going to be sitting with my friend Michelle, and as I do her makeup, we're going to be talking about the world's perspective versus God's perspective on singleness. So let's get to it. All right, Michelle, so I know that you've been single for a couple of years. Tell me about your experience.
So definitely there are a lot of ups and downs to being single, especially for prolonged periods of times. I will say though, so far though, honestly, it's been a big blessing in so many ways, in more ways than I've expected. For instance, I know for a fact there's like a lot of pressure for a lot of women here to get married or start dating right away and to get married as soon as possible. That's not the case for me. However, God has blessed me though in so many ways than I've expected, such as being able to spend a lot of quality time with my family. Over the past years, I've been blessed with being able to travel with my mom and just being able to travel on my own whenever I felt like it. But most specifically, this year though has been probably the highlight of being single. And by that, what I mean is that this is a year where God honestly has called me to himself. And I don't see how this really would have been possible in the way it has been had I been married at this time.
I know when I was younger, I wasn't really dependent on having to be with somebody, but I could definitely see where I could have given myself more time to heal, to just recoup and regather myself before just like, boom, like I have to be with somebody. And not only that, but looking for somebody to like fill the void. Because I know, it happens in relationships where you look to men to fill the void. It could be anything, but specifically in relationships. Has that been something you've ever done?
Yes and no, for sure. So there was a time where actually I was dating somebody for over 6 years. That was my high school sweetheart.
Yeah.
And of course, during that time, that was like, my transition into college, and I went to college overseas. And so that whole experience of being in love with somebody at a younger age and then going to school overseas, dealing with the whole long distance relationship, and of course that ending tragically. Usually the natural reaction of people is to go look for love in somebody else, right?
Yeah.
To kind of heal and to cope with that loss. I will say though, because of God's providential grace and his mercy, that was not the case for me. Even though I tried to, date people or whatever, it never really fell through. And that was really God's act of mercy, because I feel like had I dated the people I wanted to date immediately thereafter, everything would have just been a heartbreak after heartbreak. And that was not the case. Instead, what God has done for me though is that he allowed me to finish up my career, and strongly, especially in nursing, land the job that I wanted. And those were honestly just some of the biggest blessings of being single. And of course, not having to jump from relationship to relationship, because I've seen people do that, and I can't really say that it's ended well for the people I know.
Right. Right, because you end up, I think, trying to fill a void that only God could fill in our hearts.
Yes.
And then you end up in these relationships that aren't really so healthy.
Yes. Well, when I think of singleness too, I think of the passage in Ecclesiastes chapter 3, where it talks about like there's a season for everything, a time for everything. And I really believe that also applies to, every stage of life, such as being single, dating, getting married. And I just know, honestly, that God just really knows, his timing for me, his perfect plans for me, and just being able to trust in that specifically has given me a lot more peace and contentment than I could ever have hoped for.
The desire is there for a lot of women to want to be married, they want to have kids, they want to have a husband. Yeah. But you're saying you don't have to have that right away. There's blessings in singleness.
So, I'll hit this with two ways. For one, it's not a bad thing to desire wanting a mate, right? Wanting a spouse, because that's how God made us, right? God designed women, to have these desires to be a mom, to have children. Also, with my background being an Asian female, there's that cultural pressure to get married at a certain age. I'm sure you can relate with that,
Yes.
being Hispanic as well. But there is that cultural pressure to be married by a certain time, and if you don't do that, you are basically an old maid, essentially. However, though, like I said, I really have learned over the past few years that not everyone's timing is the same.
Yeah.
And I really believe that's where embracing his lordship in your life has made a huge difference.
Yeah.
And actually just really trusting in what he says that he'll do. That has definitely been my gateway to peace. So now I don't really feel like I'm falling behind. I believe that, God's timing has always been on time.
For a lot of people, it's being with a partner
Yes.
that they think is reaching perfection or reaching like the ultimate goal or something, which again, like you said, like those desires are good, like we have those desires, but I think it's keeping the right perspective, right, and being single.
Exactly. I mean, obviously, when you look at Instagram, right? When you look on Instagram or Facebook or any
Yes.
kind of social media outlet, usually people equate success to having a boyfriend or having a girlfriend or getting married at a certain age, having kids by this time, having this kind of career, traveling to X, Y, B, C, all these places,
Yes.
right? That's
Yep.
usually the status quo for success nowadays, right? Unfortunately, that is that,
Right.
which has led to a huge, huge skyrocket in depression among many, many women,
Yep.
especially the younger ones.
I know it, because you see all these happy pictures and perfect couples and perfect families, right?
Yes. And so, of course, as a Christian, but also as a woman, looking at that, there are moments, of course, where that can, trigger insecurity.
Yeah.
Many, many times,
Definitely.
even among the strongest women, right? They also
Right.
have that insecurity because those are, considered as unfulfilled longings.
Yes.
However, again, then like you mentioned earlier, the right perspective. I guess the next thing is, how do you define right perspective? And that is, well, who are you in Christ first? Having that, unpacked, and then of course realized, having that take root in your heart, that makes all the difference in the world. It all comes back to one thing, and that is, before you're single, or before you're married, or before you're dating anybody, or before you're a mom, or whatever, you are a Christian first. That's my motto, at least.
Right.
I'm a Christian first before I'm single. I'm a Christian first before I'm a nurse. I'm a Christian first before I'm dating. And so when you have that as the bedrock of who you are,
Right.
that I really believe, becomes your path. That becomes, how you live your life. And in many, many ways, the Bible has also looked at singleness or talked about singleness in a positive way.
Oh, yeah.
Because then you're more free to do things for the Lord.
Right.
And also, there's just a unique blessing in being single.
But I'm sure like you didn't get there right away.
No.
Right? I'm sure that
It
took
took
time
years.
for you.
So it took years of experience with singleness, actually.
Yeah.
Definitely pain was one of them, though, for sure. I think pain, heartbreak has really served me well. And seeing the pain, feeling the pain in myself, and also seeing the pain in other people who have, like we mentioned earlier, going from one relationship to another.
Yeah.
Learning from their experiences, learning from my experiences, seeing how my life was before without being really rooted in the Lord. One of the most quoted Bible verses is Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, which says, "Trust in the Lord with all of your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him and he'll make your path straight." And so for me,
Yeah,
it
that's
was
true.
trying to really understand, like, how do I really apply this to my life? Like, what does it really mean to trust the Lord with all of my heart and lean not on my own understanding? And that part, lean not on your own understanding, I believe that also applies to not leaning on cultural relevance either. He doesn't just do things without considering your well-being or, so just being able to trust that he knows what's best.
Right.
I know that's easily said than being understood,
Right.
but that's really the truth of it all, So I rest in that. I rest, in what God has planned for me. In the meantime, though, I think what the big difference now in coping is, what am I doing with my time being single? For him specifically. That's a more important question.
It's true, because I think I mean, you know, I think about it. I've been married for 8 years now, and you're in such a rush to get married. But then when you get married, I think a lot of people give up so quickly. And I always think about it like, you know, it's not such a bad thing to be single, because in your singleness, you can learn and grow. And I do believe that God teaches us in our singleness things that, you know, will prepare us in marriage, because marriage is hard. It is hard, period. Being single is hard, being married is hard.
Yeah.
Like,
It's hard both ways.
it's hard, it's
Just
hard
a different
both
kind of
ways.
hard.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, wanting to submit to somebody is already hard as it is.
Definitely.
Wouldn't you agree?
Oh,
It
yeah.
is, definitely.
Oh, yeah.
So being able to cultivate that heart and that heart of submission, firstly to the Lord, and then also to his commands of what he wants you to do, that takes time and that takes discipline. You know, I'm waiting on God's timing. Of course, it doesn't mean that I just sit, you know, in my house and just curl up in my room and just like, you know, not meet anybody. That's not what I'm saying here. But what I'm saying is that, again, just realizing I don't have to be desperate. And being desperate is never a good thing. You know, I don't care what's going on, but being desperate is never a good
Sure,
thing.
it could cause you
Yeah.
maybe to make the like not so good decisions because you want it so badly.
Because
you're
you're
not
so emotionally involved, you know, when you're just using your feelings instead of logic, instead of wisdom, instead of discernment, you know, those are recipes for disaster, let alone not being rooted in God. That definitely is your recipe for disaster. Heartbreaks that are not necessary, you know, so.
To line Michelle's eyes, I'm using Urban Decay's Blackout eyeshadow. It's one of the blackest eyeshadows you can find, and I love applying it with a flat edge brush. For the lip liner, I'm going in with Whirl from MAC. This is another universal lip liner that's very popular. And for her lipstick, I'm using Taupe, and it's also by MAC. Now I'm going in with the E40 brush from Sigma, and I like to go back and forth in windshield wiper motions to make sure everything is blending seamlessly and that there are no harsh lines left. So, what would you say to single people right now that are going through it, that maybe aren't so confident in being single and they're struggling with it?
I would say, firstly, choose deliberately to be content with your singleness, because being content and being happy, those are choices that you can make. That's really what it comes down to. You can choose to be satisfied with where you are. Again, looking back in hindsight, like where I was and like realizing, well, where does my contentment really come from? You know, because I also learned the hard way that if I cannot be content now where I am, how do I know for sure that being married or dating somebody will actually fix that? There's a passage in the Bible that I refer to, Psalm 90 verse 14, I want to say, which goes like this: satisfy me with your steadfast mercy, or in other translations, satisfy me, Lord, with your steadfast love. So right there, that refers to, you know, that's right there is asking the Lord to be the first one to give you the satisfaction that you need in life. So making that choice right there is saying, Lord, here I am single. Help me, Lord, to be content with where I am in life, single or not, right? That's the first things that I would say. Secondly, enjoy it. Enjoy it. Make yourself, you know, busy, I would say, but the right kind of busy. Do what you can to serve the Lord as best as you can now, and enjoy that. Enjoy the other unique things that singleness provides. Travel. Enjoy your time with family. Cultivate relationships with family and friends. Find ways to cultivate and develop patience, for sure. Learn what it means to be selfless. If you can't learn to be selfless or patient and learn to self-sacrifice and putting yourself last, I don't see how you can really truly be ready for marriage then. Right now, in my life right now, what I'm learning to do is learning how to be patient with people, learn how to put myself last, learning what it means to be submissive to the Lord and his commands. In doing those three, I feel biblically this is how the Lord's preparing me for a marriage when it's my time.
That's awesome.
That's some of the
Beautifully
things that I would definitely recommend to anybody who's single.
Thank you. That's awesome. All right, you ready to see your makeup?
Yes. Okay,
All right.
ready?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Look, I like my eyeliner and everything else. Yeah, it's been such a long time since I got my makeup done.
Really?
Yeah,
Aw,
thank you.
You're welcome.
I like the lip color and everything, yeah.
You're welcome. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story.
Well, thanks for having me on here.
Yeah, I think a lot of people will benefit from, you know, your experience with singleness. So thank you.
Enjoy it, guys.
Yeah. I think it's refreshing to hear from somebody that is single, just to hear her confidence and how she has found contentment in God in her singleness. My encouragement to anybody that's single would be to trust the Lord with your life, because when you trust God, you're able to surrender your expectations, your heart's desires, because God is a good Father and He knows what our hearts desire, but He also has a plan for our lives. So stop listening to the outside voices and you start reading your Bible. You start praying, and that is going to shift your perspective and it's going to shift your focus. I'll see you guys next time on Redefined.